Is the United Nations Security Council still representative of the world today? A question that's been echoing across the globe. The UNSC, a key organ of the United Nations, holds the hefty responsibility of maintaining international peace and security. But as we navigate the 21st century, the global power dynamics are shifting. Developing nations are emerging as significant players on the world stage, and the current structure of the UNSC seems to be lagging behind these changes. This has led to a clarion call for reform to ensure equitable representation and reflect the contemporary power landscape. Enter the G4 nations: Brazil, Germany, India, and Japan, advocating for a more inclusive UNSC. These nations, each with their unique strengths and contributions, believe in a Security Council that truly mirrors the diversity and dynamism of our world. The call for reform is not a mere power play. It's a demand for a more balanced and representative global governance. So, what does reform look like? Let's examine the G4 model. The G4 model is a proposition for the reform of the United Nations Security Council, UNSC, put forward by 4 nations: Brazil, Germany, India, and Japan. Each of these nations advocates for a permanent seat at the UNSC, arguing that their economic and political influence on the global stage warrants such representation. Brazil, as the largest economy in Latin America and a leading voice in the global South, believes it should have a say in global security matters. Germany, the largest economy in Europe, contends that it should have a permanent seat commensurate with its economic might and its role in the European Union. India, with its burgeoning economy, strategic location, and the fact that it's the world's largest democracy, sees itself as a deserving candidate for a permanent seat. And Japan, the third largest economy in the world, has been a significant contributor to the UN's budget and peacekeeping missions, which it argues should earn it a permanent position. The process of reform, as outlined in Article 108 of the UN Charter, involves a 2-stage process. First, a draft for the proposed amendment to the Charter is prepared, which requires at least 2/3 of the member nations, including all permanent members of the UNSC, to sign and ratify. This is followed by the actual amendment to the Charter, which also requires a 2/3 majority. The rationale behind the G4 model is to make the UNSC more representative of the contemporary global power dynamics. The current structure of the UNSC, which was established in the aftermath of the Second World War, arguably no longer reflects the realities of the 21st century. The G4 model presents a compelling case for reform, but it's not without its roadblocks. The path to reform is fraught with challenges. Let's delve into these. The G4 nations, Brazil, Germany, India, and Japan, face staunch opposition from the existing permanent members of the UNSC. This resistance is rooted in political and strategic motivations. The permanent members, also known as the P5, are the victors of the Second World War, and they have held sway over global security matters since 1945. Any change in this status quo is viewed as a potential threat to their global influence. On a strategic level, each of the P5 nations has their own reservations. For instance, China is opposed to Japan's inclusion due to historical disputes, while the US, UK, and France are hesitant to dilute their influence with the addition of more permanent members. Russia, on the other hand, remains non-committal, carefully balancing its global alliances. India's case is particularly intriguing. Despite being one of the largest democracies and economies in the world, India's efforts to secure a permanent seat have been met with resistance. However, India has been relentless in its pursuit. It actively participates in the intergovernmental negotiations on Security Council reform, tirelessly advocating for a more representative and democratic UNSC. Yet, the challenges are formidable. UNSC reform involves amending the UN Charter, a 2-stage process outlined in Article 108. This requires the support of 2/3 of the UN member states, including all the P5 members. As it stands, the necessary consensus seems elusive. The hurdles are high, but the determination of these nations remains unshaken. Where does this leave us, and what lies ahead in the quest for UNSC reform? The journey continues, with nations like India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan, the G4, persistently advocating for change. This reform isn't just about a seat at the table, it's about reshaping global governance, making it more equitable and reflective of the modern world. It's about ensuring peace and security in a way that represents all nations. So, let's keep our eyes on this space. The journey towards a reformed UNSC is a global endeavor, demanding our collective attention and action.